This forum is for County Supervisor District 4. The forum is being recorded and will be accessible through the website www.lwvsonoma.org on our YouTube channel in its entirety without any editing of the content. All recordings of candidate forums are the sole property of the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County. You can post the link to the recording of this candidate forum and refer supporters to it, but you cannot take excerpts from this recording for use in campaign materials. And unfortunately, we cannot fact check everything said in the forum, so we encourage you to reach out to candidates for further clarification. The candidates will provide a 1-minute opening remark as well as a 1-minute closing statement. And then candidates will have 90 seconds to answer each question. We have a timekeeper who will signal when the speakers need to wrap up their response. League members have created a set of questions to get us started, but as I mentioned previously, you may put your questions in the Q&A. We'll ask as many questions as time allows, and we may combine similar questions. Your questions should not be partisan in nature or be directed to any one candidate. If you have submitted a question which was not asked, we encourage you to follow up with the candidates. Due to this virtual format, there may be some freezing of screens or other technical glitches as already demonstrated, which we will address as efficiently as possible. We thank you for your patience and understanding. Before the forum started, I showed the candidates how their names were picked to establish a speaking order. And to ensure fairness as we proceed with questions, we'll consistently rotate between the candidates. We'll now begin with opening statements. Todd Lance, please give us your opening statement.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate this, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for having me. My name is Todd Lance. I've lived in District 4 for 48 years, from Cloverdale most of that time. I'm married, and I've been married for 22 years. I have 2 daughters. They are 19 and 21, and both in college right now. I own a local construction company that focuses on small projects in the area, and it's a lot of fun to do. I've been in local politics for about 14 years now. My first 8 were on a school board, and my last 6 have been on the city council, with 4 of those as the mayor and 2 of those as the vice mayor. The projects that I focused on while I was on the school board was fiscal responsibility and remodeling all of your school sites and making sure that high school kids had access to internet and tablets and laptops. As a city council member and your mayor, I have focused on business growth, economic development, vegetation management and environmental projects, focusing on our river parks and open spaces. So thank you for having me.
Melanie Bagby, please give us your opening statement.
Well, I'd like to thank our host, the Sonoma County League of Women Voters, for all the work that you do to promote an engaged electorate. I'm Melanie Bagby, and as the only Democrat in this race, I will protect our community and our immigrant neighbors from Trump administration policies, defend voter-approved civilian oversight of law enforcement while supporting our officers, build mutual aid capacity for climate emergencies and disaster response. I'll lead on the housing and homelessness crisis, water security, clean energy, and transportation. And I will champion family agriculture and our local food systems. I've been endorsed by Congressman Huffman, Sonoma County Democrats, the Sierra Club, and the North Bay Labor Council. It would be my honor to serve you. You can find out more about my experience and my values at melaniebagby.com.
Thank you, Melanie. Tom Schwedhelm, please give us your opening statement.
Thank you so much, Donna. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters, as Melanie and Todd also did, for actually putting this forum on. So it gives an opportunity for all the residents of Sonoma County to hear what our thoughts are on the issues that are facing Sonoma County. So my name is Tom Schwedhelm, and I am a candidate for the 4th District Supervisors race here in Sonoma County. And I really believe anyone entering this race and or supervisorial candidates really need to possess the leadership skills and experience combined with a track record of getting things done and those personal connections that can lead to us getting things done moving into the future. I believe I possess those based on my 31 years at the Santa Rosa Police Department, where I was retired as its chief of police, and for the last 5 years of my career. And then after a brief 2-day retirement, I started running for the Santa Rosa City Council. I was fortunate enough to be elected by the residents of Santa Rosa for 2 terms on the City Council. I spent 1 year as vice mayor and 2 years as mayor. And over that time, I learned a lot about the connections working together to get things done, especially learning in our fire recovery after the Tubbs fire, and then in 2020 when I was mayor in the COVID. So I look forward to the questions being introduced and moving forward and sharing that information with everyone who's attending today's forum.
Thank you all. Attendees, remember to submit your questions using the Q&A button on the Zoom screen at any time during the forum. The questions that each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the questions. Feel free not to use the full 90 seconds if you choose not to. And we'll begin with Melanie. What are the 3 top priorities you want to see happen in your district and in the county at large?
Well, I believe we need to get back and focus on a transition to a clean energy economy. No one is going to do that for us. If we're going to have a Green New Deal and provide good family supporting jobs, we need to get refocused on big local projects so that we can keep our labor force that's very talented, keep it right here. We need to focus on completing Sonoma Clean's Power Geozone so that we can create clean energy and work on our green tech development. We need to complete the SMART train all the way to Cloverdale so that Cloverdale residents and North County residents have access to healthcare and jobs, but also so that our county employers have access to workforce and affordable housing for their workforce as well. And lastly, but certainly not least, is we need to ensure our water supply and a just transition for the decommissioning of the Potter Valley project and supporting the Eel Russian Authority.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. For me, the 3 largest issues, and obviously there's many more than just these 3, but prioritization of it. Housing, I think, is a key factor. So for me, the top 3 are housing, our economy, which includes the budget, and then obviously identifying the sustainable water source. So when it comes to housing, what the county can really do is actually be a partner in developing it and streamlining that. I think too many times in the past, the county has presented barriers for developers to try to produce that housing that we all need. I envision a Sonoma County in the near future where our children can actually afford to live in Sonoma County. The county needs to be a partner with that. The economy is also going to be very significant. A key thing is going to be our ag industry. Yesterday's Board of Supervisors, they had a study session planned for that, but unfortunately it got disrupted. But how can we support our local businesses to create that thriving economy that benefits all of us? That's the big key. And then the sustainable water source, as Melanie had mentioned, the Potter Valley project will have an impact in the coming years on all of Sonoma County and identifying things that we have control of here in Sonoma County to mitigate any impacts that are outside our control based on the decommissioning of the Potter Valley project. Many things are on the books that we're working on with Sonoma Water. We need to focus on those efforts and identify the sustainable water source, above ground water storage, so that there's enough water for not only our residents, but also our vital agriculture community here in Sonoma County.
Thank you. Todd?
First thing I want to talk about is affordability. We need to focus on things along with PRMD. We have a lot of regulatory things that go on that can be combined and work together and ways to make it more efficient when you're doing building. Things along with AI and FaceTime types of inspections. Working together and collaborating through PRMD on the different areas that will make the process streamlined, which makes housing more affordable because it's efficient. Efficiency creates your affordability with that. Fiscal responsibility. Our county has a major issue of spending on ideals and the fluff, and I want to focus more on the needs versus the wants. And I really am looking forward to looking at the budget and making sure that we are spending our community's money wisely. Number 1 for me, though, is water. And as everybody probably on this knows, I've been focused on water for years. The decommissioning of those 2 dams in Potter Valley will be detrimental to us. And we will see that in a report that is going to be coming out for the Urban Water Management Plan. And it's going to show that there is no water from Lake Mendocino to Healdsburg, and they call it constant curtailments. So we will have no water if we do not find a plan that works. So that is why I've been focused working with and in collaboration with Sonoma Water, the state and the federal governments to create solutions. We have the things that we need to do for storage, but we need to continue to try to save the system that we have, because if you don't, we will never have enough water in our generation and our kids' generation to have the ag and the people here in our area.
Thank you. The next question will be for Tom. While a supervisor represents and serves their district, many issues are common to all of Sonoma County. Federal budget cuts, affordability, and so on. If elected, how would you work with your fellow supervisors to address common goals and differences?
As I mentioned in my opening comments, personal relationships and connections is how you get things done here. As evidence of the endorsement that I have of 4 of the 5 supervisors, it's building relationships over the 40 years that I've been in public service here. Because again, what's happening in District 4 also affects, especially in the ag industry, every other district in Sonoma County. So already having established those working relationships, that's how we'll get things done. So it's not something I need to start doing. It's something that I did when we were dealing with our current homeless population. When I first started at the Santa Rosa City Council, we had nothing but nonprofits on our continuum of care. By the time I left the city council, we actually have a 17-person board with regional representation working together, because homelessness, solving the homelessness challenge we have here, is a regional issue. So I've already modeled those behaviors. This is what we can do by working together. So it's not something new that I've done. It is something that I've always been doing over the 40 years of my service to, the Sonoma County area. I've also am very interested in learning things that are going on in different districts, like the Sonoma Development Center and the progress on that. What can I do to support that supervisor in continuing to develop that property? Same thing all over the county, because we need to look at this regional approach. I look at public service as a team sport. It's not individual, because each and every supervisor has an opinion that I want to listen to and work together to get the results that we desire for all of Sonoma County.
Thank you. Todd?
Sorry about that. It's not what I will do, it's what I'm already doing. I'm already working with the Board of Supervisors on several projects. I'm on regional boards with just about every person there is on the Board of Supervisors currently, whether it's Sonoma County Transportation. I'm also on, I've been on Sonoma Clean Power, multiple agencies. And then I'm always doing things with the homeless. I'm working with our NGOs and all the different regional committees with those. I'm on several. Our mental health and our homeless committees. And I'm also working with open space all the time. That we just did 200 and some odd acres up in Cloverdale area that we work constantly with them on. We have multiple projects that we're always doing around here and trying to create more along those lines. I work with Sonoma County Parks a lot. And so it's not what I will do, it's what I'm already doing. And I love working with them because we get to get things done. I just look to be able to have access to more to do more.
Thank you. Melanie?
Would you repeat the question, Donna?
Yes. While a supervisor represents and serves their district, many issues are common to all of Sonoma County, like federal budget cuts, affordability, and so on. If elected, how would you work with your fellow supervisors to address common goals and differences?
Well, in my years on council, 2 terms on the Cloverdale City Council, and then 7 years on the Planning Commission, one of the big lessons that I learned is that you prepare for your meeting, you listen to the staff report, you discuss it with your fellow board members or your fellow council members, and then you listen very carefully to citizen input. And that can be accomplished in, for small items, 1 or 2 or 3 meetings, or it may be a series of meetings where you're also reaching out to members of the community, maybe touring a property and really getting boots on the ground to understand the issue. And relationships with your staff, with members of the public, with people who are, bringing projects as opportunities, business owners, working together with folks is absolutely the basis of this relationship, because it is the cornerstone of our representative government and being the people's representative when these issues are being discussed. So that's basically, my approach to dealing with issues that are large and small that are going to be, impacting our communities for decades to come.
Thank you. Todd, you'll take this next question first. What is your position on the current federal administration's notion of allowing offshore oil drilling up the Northern California coast?
Well, unfortunately, that's something that we can't control. And so with that, I think that we need to focus on more of the local stuff that we can. And that's why when I was on Sonoma Clean Power, I loved the fact that they had the geozone. It was funny when they called me. I don't know why they thought maybe I would be against it. And they're like, hey, we really want to hold this town hall in Cloverdale. And would you get on board with this project? And I'm like, oh my gosh, absolutely. This is something that's been going on for a century in Cloverdale, in our area, where most of your clean energy comes from, and people don't even realize it. And so we focused on that and the new improvements that they have. And I'm so excited to keep pushing this with Sonoma Clean Power and making our environment cleaner and greener in our area and supplying this power, not only for us, but for areas around us, and teaching them how to make our world better.
Thank you. Melanie.
Yeah, regarding the federal administration's obsession with offshore drilling, I think that California residents have been very clear on their feelings on this issue. And I have been a signatory on many letters that have gone to both the governor and to Washington, being opposed to that. And this is where Sonoma County is in a position to be a leader. We do have the geozone. I was serving on Sonoma Clean Power when that was established. And no one is going to lead Sonoma County into the Green New Deal era, except for ourselves. And so this is an opportunity for us to lead on that. We need to make sure that we can continue the transition to green power, electric vehicles. Sonoma County's #1 greenhouse gas emission is cars. And so we need to continue on leading in the areas of public transportation and access to improving our public transportation network, as well as improving our electric car charging opportunities for our residents.
Thank you. Tom?
So for me, again, it's trying to focus on things that we have control of. As others have mentioned, the state of California has been very clear on that. We don't want that, but as is clear as what's going on in Washington now, we don't have much say they're going to do that. And so now what we have is an opportunity. How do we mitigate those risks? And I think identifying creative ways of creating our own clean energy, using the example of the city of Santa Rosa, where back in the 80s, their treated effluent was a liability due to technology, and people thought it never could be done. We actually started sending it up to the geysers to create clean energy. And so that project creates clean energy for over 100,000 of our Sonoma County residents. That's just one example of what we can do. And I think Sonoma County has the power to do it. To mitigate those other impacts that may be going on out of the current administration, that's where, again, personal relationships and understanding what our two representatives in Congress can do for us. How do we do this together to try to mitigate what damages potentially could happen there? That's what we can control. But I really think it's important that what Sonoma County can also do is be that creative, innovative thought process, like the geysers project that we did in Santa Rosa, to create clean energy as a model for the rest of the country, so we don't need the offshore drilling that is currently the current administration is supporting.
Thank you. Melanie, you'll answer this question first. Do you support the smart train tax extension that is on the June ballot, and why or why not?
Well, I don't just support it. I'm personally distributing yes on B signs. I served on the SMART board. I was very proud to do it. Before that, I was an adamant supporter of SMART. I was one of the members of the board that voted to support SMART's PLAs, to support our local union labor. I was a member of the SMART board when we instituted the fare free for students as well as seniors. And I don't just see SMART as, and its completion at Cloverdale, as the end of the project. I really see it as phase 1 of a transportation change throughout Sonoma County. We need to concentrate on completing the mascots program, which will improve bus service and connectivity to SMART, so that we can make sure that we're getting, our students and our seniors and our job forces to the places where they need to be on a daily basis on that community train.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes, I also am in support of the smart tax, and mainly because it's one of the things that government said this is what we're going to do. Line will go all the way up to Cloverdale. And it's very important for me to say, yeah, we're going to follow through with what our commitment to the voters of Sonoma County were. I also think, as still as Smart has started to become more efficient and effective in delivery of its services, we've seen that increased ridership because I think there's still more to do because a lot of the residents in Sonoma County have not worked it into their own, whether it be commuting or how there are ways that they could use the Smart train. Just use an example of a close friend of mine who once the HOV lanes, due to the current federal administration, they closed those to his electric car. He started taking the smart train and now he loves it. And I think changing those behaviors, because some people think, well, why would I need to, use the smart train? Once we start hearing those examples and changing our behaviors, the behaviors of Sonoma County commuters, that can make a huge difference. So yes, I'm a big fan of that, and I think we need to do what we can do, and not only just the smart train, but also the subsequent trail that is also the commitment that was made to the voters of Sonoma County that will parallel that same track because I'm an avid cyclist, and that is a great resource for our community. We said we were going to do it. Now we just need to do it. And part of that step will be voting for the continuation, the extension of the smart sales tax.
Thank you. Todd?
I do, because it's what the voters want. It's not about how money is spent, it's what the voters want. And that's what I'm here to protect and give them. So what we need to do is focus on SMART and what their promises have been. They guarantee they're going to go to Cloverdale. We have to have their guarantee they're going to get to Cloverdale and actually do it. I want to see more improvements along the lines of like freight, because that's what's going to make it more efficient and profitable for everyone. So they could do a hub out of areas like Cloverdale that was designed for that in the past and is still designed for where the tracks are currently to do not only passenger trains and passenger hubs for places like Lake and Mendocino County, but it's also for freight out of the same area. We really need to focus on the last mile. I know we talk about mascots and things along those lines. We really need to focus on that because that's the detriment of the train right currently, along with the financial portion of it. So if we focus on the things that keep people from getting on the train, it will actually put more people on the train. The last thing I want to talk about with the trail is Senator McGuire's plan actually stops in Geyserville and then picks up again somewhere else. It skips over the top of Cloverdale. So I want that trail guaranteed that it goes into Cloverdale's area from our electeds when we make this happen. So I look forward to it passing. I look forward to getting it all the way to Cloverdale and doing what we promised the voters.
Thank you. Tom, you'll answer this question first. We have a few questions about housing. Housing affordability is an ongoing issue. There's pressure to build more housing in the unincorporated areas of Sonoma County, and there are lots of mandates. What are your views on creating more affordable housing and/or not following the mandates that are coming? I think one of our attendees is concerned about Windsor.
Yes, as I mentioned in my opening comments, housing is a huge issue here in Sonoma County. And I think a lot of the state mandates, the buy right developments, are because there's other jurisdictions in California that are trying to slow play a lot of these housing developments because they're not wanting the housing development. That's not Sonoma County's place. We have not done that here in Sonoma County. So I think to make it more affordable, what can the county do to actually accelerate that? A lot has to do with Permit Sonoma because I really think that, Permit Sonoma can be an economic development driver, as is the housing, because it's very difficult to attract head of household businesses here to Sonoma County without, when they ask the question, where are they going to live? So where are we going to do that? I think we need to do smart housing. Like there's several developments now, almost upwards of 1,400 apartments in the airport area. It needs to be smart near transit. We can't have the housing in the food deserts. So identifying those locations in Sonoma County where it makes sense. The infrastructure is there. The water is there so that we're able to actually provide the water resources that'll be needed for those additional housing things. But the biggest thing for me is removing those barriers to housing that are currently in existence and how do we work with developers because the county does not develop, they're not developers, right? So what barriers can we remove to accelerate that housing and actually encourage it, get to the NIMBYism where we actually want this housing so our kids have some place to live so they don't have to leave Sonoma County. They can stay here and thrive. That's what we're looking for.
And Todd?
Cloverdale is one of the only cities in the entire state that has actually met the needs of RHNA, the Regional Housing Necessities Assessments, that the state imposes on us. They tell you how many houses you have to build for low, middle, and high income values. And we're one of the only ones that have actually met the lower end because we focus on the lower and affordable housing. But what the state mandates do, though, is they need to include more than they are, because if they're going to impose these mandates on us, then they need to include the infrastructure for places like our part of the county. District 4 has a lot of rural areas, and these only include their property lines that they're responsible for. But like in Cloverdale, we have a project right now that crosses over the railroad tracks, goes under a freeway, and it's next to 2 lumber mills and a highway. And there's no sidewalks, there's no lighting, there's no infrastructure. And so that becomes a detriment onto a city. And for a small city, that's very difficult to get around. So the state needs to change their infrastructure requirements and necessities. And when they impose something, they need to help us with that. PRMD, if we can make that more efficient, it makes your mid-level homes affordable and that to build. And so as a developer or a builder, they can build these if PRMD is changed and made more efficient. So I look forward to being able to work on that and make that happen and focus on our general plan for the housing in our area to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the people here in Sonoma County.
And one of our attendees asked what PRMD stands for, and it's the Permitting Department for Sonoma County. And Melanie.
Yes, thank you. So Sonoma County does have an affordability crisis, and it isn't going to solve itself. We need more housing, but the right housing in the right place. And at Permit Sonoma, that means implementing objective development and design standards for identified affordable housing sites, like the one in Geyserville referred to as Geyserville 1. So that way we can just stop debating every single project and we can just start building. It means using the general plan revisions to address the missing middle. We need to see duplexes, triplexes, ADUs, and lot splits in some of our older neighborhoods. It means we need to prioritize density in city centers, and that's something that the county needs to work with each of our cities to do, rather than sprawl into our agricultural lands. I also want to be honest and real about a real problem, and it's really being felt in Windsor. When we lower parking requirements for dense housing, cars are spilling into surrounding neighborhoods. We can't just build and walk away. We need to pair these new housings with real transit and bike and pedestrian solutions. And that's why mascots is so essential. So as supervisor, I'll use my planning experience to get this right, because working families in this county deserve a place where they can actually afford to live and deserve good transportation alternatives that go along with their housing.
Okay, Todd, you'll answer this question next. It's very similar. People are asking more questions about this. The 8 specific area plans that exist in the unincorporated areas are part of the general plan, which Melanie was just referencing. What role do the policies in these 8 area plans play in deciding how proposed high quality density housing affects rural and agricultural areas? And if you would also touch upon, people living in rural areas are concerned about evacuation, tourism, water, and all of that. So how do you plan to consider all of the concerns of everyone?
You really want me to do this in 90 seconds?
Yeah, right.
We have to be smart about what we do, because you can't do all of this that you just mentioned in a part of our county the way that it's designed. Our ag has the right to farm. You can't build apartment complexes and duplexes and triplexes in areas that have these high are all air ag and things going on, because you're going to get complaints, and they have the right to do that. And we need to make sure that we're doing smart building with what we're doing. Our general plan has it, but it needs to be looked at and make sure that we're following it and doing what's right for the people, whether they're in their ag or they're in the housing, because you don't want to build something just because there's a plot of land. And so we need to be smart about what we do. And what we're doing right now is just trying to do infill housing. And that's not something that you can do in a place like Geyserville. It's not something you can do in a place like Mark West Springs. That's not right or even in Cloverdale, it gets very difficult to be able to provide the transportation, the necessary needs like healthcare and things along those lines for the people that move there. And just because you have a plot of land to put a house, it doesn't mean it's the right place to do it.
And Melanie, can you answer that again?
Certainly. Yeah, these legacy urban neighborhoods that we have in Sonoma County, they're actually some of our most special and, loved locations. I think of, Grayton and Freestone and where I grew up, the Larkfield Wickiup area. These are actually really large. In Larkfield Wickiup's case, I think it's the largest urban area, depending on how you count it, that doesn't have a city council representing it, doesn't have a planning commission. They're really, dependent on their supervisor and Permit Sonoma to get these things right. And there have been particular parcels that have been identified that would not only provide some of that essential missing middle and workforce, but it would also drive some development of services for the surrounding neighborhoods that would really improve those neighborhoods, like bring in improved sidewalks and access to parks, access to those, small walkable downtown areas. So, we just need to take a balance. And I think that the smartest way to implement it at Permit Sonoma, I'll just repeat myself, is just implementing those objective development and design standards for those areas that we have identified, so that we can just stop creating a runaround and making those projects more difficult to pencil out and get them on the market for our workforce and our working families.
And Tom.
Thank you for that question, Donna, whoever asked it, because the specific plans, I really think when you look at those, and in District 4, we have the airport specific plan that is currently being looked at. And then there's also the Franz Valley specific plan that I think was created in 1979. Two total different areas of District 4, right? And so I'm a big fan. We don't want to change the character of our neighborhoods or of our areas. So where does smart growth take place? Where you have the infrastructure in place so that people can actually thrive in this new housing. Infill developments, I think, is a key thing, but in the right locations. And even though there's several different measures that come from the state, like SB 330, where you have 5 meetings for a lot of these projects, it's going to be incumbent upon the county to make sure they get local input, right? Get local neighborhood impact about what this might have. Again, creating a new, several dozen, whether it be townhomes or apartments or even the missing middle that we're looking for, in locations where there's not support services, the infrastructure does not support it, there's not grocery stores there. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So again, if we're more creative with this, and again, the timing is great with the airport specific plan because we have some hotels going in there, the infrastructure is there. Let's be more strategic about where we're going to develop that because everyone can agree we need more housing. The county's got their RENA numbers about 3,800. We need to be very strategic about where those go so that we keep the rural character of Sonoma County.
And Melanie, you'll take this question. There are plans to relocate more county offices further north near the airport. What are your views on these plans to relocate?
Yeah, I was really not in favor of moving the facilities to airport. I thought that we had a really good redevelopment plan for downtown Santa Rosa. The Sonoma County voters have been very clear about this. They want city-centered development, and we need to be investing, our tax dollars in. Since we don't have redevelopment anymore, we need to be investing it in creating more walkable and workable and enjoyable places in our city centers. But, given that some of those decisions have been made to move to airport, they actually started that move at a very interesting time. It was kind of during the filing period for all of the candidates who are running right now. So, on Friday, you were going to the clerk's office on Fiscal Drive, and then the next week you were showing up on off of Airport. And so, the only saving grace that I find of locating some of those offices up at Airport is the smart station, but it's really evident at how Airport Boulevard is essentially a road. It's going to take several years and some good planning to make it more walkable and accessible for Sonoma County residents to access those county facilities.
And Tom?
So for me, it's a challenging question because we don't have all the data that the 5 supervisors currently have, because much of these discussions as they're negotiating are done in closed session. What I am in favor of, there are some facts. It's an aging infrastructure right now where the county offices are, right? And so if you start looking at, is it more economical and efficient with our tax dollars to retrofit that, build it from scratch, or take an existing building? Because if you look at the cost of the current county courthouse, that I know a lot of those are state dollars, that was about $1,200 a square foot to build, right? So if you're going to create a new building, and again, not having all the information about the 1950s, 1960s design from our current county complex, what's the most efficient way of solving that problem? So again, it's a balance of what is the most efficient use of those tax dollars, and taking an existing building may be the direction to go, especially if I know there's some plans that will create on the current footprint of the county complex some much needed housing that all of us have been discussing. That might be a solution for that. But again, the big challenge is I think they need to have the discussion and take a look at all of the information. So what is the most efficient and effective use of our county dollars and our tax dollars? Because the county does need a facility upgrade. And the other issue I think that I haven't heard discussed is how long are they planning for? Is this next purchase going to be a 10-year plan, 20-year plan, 30-year plan? Factor that into the discussions. And those are the data points that I don't think us or the rest of the public quite have at this point.
And Todd? Oh, you're muted, Todd.
Sorry, I didn't click off.
I know it's hard to remember that.
As a contractor, I know the difference between new and remodeling and things along those lines. And I don't think this is a very smart move and responsible move. As an outsider, not seeing what the current supervisors see, it seems like it's not a very smart move to be spending almost $100 million on some buildings for the county employees versus spending your tax dollars on things like healthcare, mental health services, and infrastructure, your vegetation management, your in-stream maintenance, your fire resilience, the things that we really truly need in this county. It shouldn't be about the fluff for the supervisors and their staff. Now, this is only from an outsider because I don't know, but I look at things like right now in Cloverdale, we looked at building a new police station versus remodeling the one we had. And it was about 10% the cost to do it with the remodel versus the other. As a contractor, I know the difference in cost for residential and commercial. And so I know that it's a smarter move to do it that way. And when I look at the prices of what we have been saying the county is going to be doing, $56 million deal, which is $10 million over an asking price. These are things that are unacceptable for my tax dollars in my eyes, and it should be for everyone. So I would go in there being more fiscally responsible, look at what they're actually getting for their dollar and make better decisions. And that's why I want to have the seat as the District 4 supervisor.
Thank you all. Tom, you'll answer this question first. What are your biggest climate change concerns for Sonoma County, and how will you address them? And quite a few of our attendees are asking about your forest policies.
So for me, that was mentioned earlier, the biggest concern and the biggest contributor to the GHG is the vehicles miles traveled. So how to get more and more cars off the road. The challenge with the current administration, as they're not incentivizing the electric vehicles, even though I know both in the city of Santa Rosa and I think the county is trying to electrify much of their fleet, which I think is the direction to go, which is going to impact that greatly. And so being able to put those resources and being creative, how we identify the ways that we're actually going to reduce those GHGs, and that's where we need to work with the 9 cities. One of the big things that I have seen being on the Santa Rosa City Council for 8 years, it didn't seem like we were already always part of those discussions, because when you take those regional climate action plans, were we working together, all 9 cities and the county, to identify the most strategic ways of actually lowering those and have some realistic metrics to show some success for that? We mentioned earlier the smart extension. That is going to be huge to continuing that all the way up to Cloverdale, to get more and more vehicles, the number one contributor to GHG, get more of those vehicles off the road. So we need to go in that path with our clear objective. When we have opportunities such as that, we need to support it, but we need to work together with the cities to try to accomplish that.
And Todd.
I have 3 main areas under the climate change that I focus on. And number 1 is fire. And so I look at things like vegetation management, because that's a real bad detriment on our climate. And so if we can control or minimize the fires that we have, the best thing we can do is focus on our vegetation management along those lines and our in-stream maintenance. Water security is huge in our area. As we've already talked about the Potter Valley project, and that the water management plan is going to show that we have no water from Mendocino County all the way to Healdsburg, and our river will go dry every year. It is in the plan now. And so we need to focus on water storage and aquifer recharge. And that is what I've been doing along with Sonoma Water and with our state and federal leaders. I also think that we need to focus on open space. Open space is a great thing so that we can keep the urban sprawl from happening in areas. And so Cloverdale focused on that. We've been still pushing the entire time I've been on council to grow our open space footprint, change our boundaries so that we can make sure that we have green protected areas that we preserve and protect for our generations to come.
And Melanie?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. What are your biggest, oh, sorry. Where were we? I'm confused.
Is regarding climate change?
Forest policies. What are your biggest climate change concerns for Sonoma County and how we address them, including your forest policies?
Certainly. Yeah, that's a big question. And, I think our forest policy really focuses on our climate resiliency. We've all lived through the impacts of wildfire, which so easily, unfortunately, become urban fires, as we've seen. We also need to make sure that we're focusing on protecting our biodiversity. And one of the things that the county really has been not as active in doing is commenting on the timber harvesting plans, and that has a huge impact on our forests and our green belts in Sonoma County. And I think that that's an area that we could definitely improve on. As far as my concerns, it's everything that we've lived through, in the last 25 years that I've lived in Cloverdale, and after having grown up in Sonoma County, we're always mindful, I think, now about the impacts of wildfires because it was such a big part of our lives for so long. But with that also comes the flooding. I mean, we're anticipative of possibly having an inch of rain on Saturday, and we'll see how we can cope with it. But I think it's those wild backs and forth of that impact our very sensitive and aging infrastructures, and our ability to bring mutual aid to each of our communities.
You guys are doing a great job of staying within your 90 seconds, so we're going to get through a lot of questions. We appreciate that. Todd, this one will go to you. The Board of Supervisors voted to approve an ordinance related to not cooperating with ICE, known as the Non-Collaboration Ordinance. This would apply to all county agencies except for those departments governed by elected officials, such as the Sheriff's Office and the DA. There was discussion of bringing this back later to address these departments. What are your views on this?
Well, above all, I support the immigrants and I support the immigration reform that we need to focus on through our government. We need to continue to follow state law. And I think that we need to engage in more outreach with our community to make sure that we know that the citizens that are here, the immigrants that are here, that are focusing on being good people and working in our communities and helping us and being part of our county and our community, that we need to know that they need to know that they have our support. I'm sorry on that, but then there's your bad apples, and we need to know that there is a deterrent, and that when you are convicted of a crime and it's something that is a heinous crime or a felony that's dangerous, those are the people that, you know what, we don't need you here, and we need to make sure that they leave our area and are deported. So I focus on showing the people that are working hard and doing well in our area that we absolutely support them and will stand behind them. I did this as a deputy, and I loved every bit of it. And I will make sure that the bad apples are removed from our country if I can make that happen. The sheriff is focusing only on that, and I support that. I support the ordinance that the county just did 100%.
And Melanie.
Yeah, I'm deeply in agreement with Supervisor Corsi's stance on this. Personally, what my preference would be for cooperation would be with ICE would be limiting it to um, signed orders from a judge, court orders, and I'm going to support the I'm going to say that I support Chris Corsi's stance on this. You know, when I was a Cloverdale council member, I was very proud to have been part of implementing community policing in our city. And what I'm seeing now in Minneapolis, where I have family, is they are living in occupied territory. And I think that a lot of people are afraid to speak out in Sonoma County because they don't want to attract the attention and the ire of ICE. But I think that it's incumbent on all of us, especially people who aspire to be public servants and elected officials, to say what they truly believe in. And I believe in due process and the rule of law. I don't believe that ICE presence in our communities makes us safer. I think it makes us less safe. We need folks to be able to feel confident that their civil rights are going to be protected when they reach out to law enforcement. And so that's my position.
And Tom?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, for me, first and foremost, anything regarding this topic is all about community safety. What's going to make our community the safest that it absolutely can be? And so I do agree with the supervisors in their vote yesterday about having that limited contact with ICE, because I agree with the sheriff. He's following state law. SB 54 outlines the circumstances when the county can notify ICE. And for me, it's serious and violent felonies. And as Supervisor Hopkins mentioned, I could not, I don't think it would be appropriate that if we have someone who is undocumented in this community who's been convicted of a, let's say he's a sexual predator, to release that person when we have an opportunity to remove that person from the community. I just don't think that is adding to the safety of our community. And if we're talking about what impact would that have on the immigrants in our community or the rest of our community, how would we measure that? Because all of this, there's not data to say it's a feeling of safety or of not safety. And I think the Board of Supervisors have made it very clear we only care about Sonoma County residents. How do we make it absolutely the safest community as we can? By committing up to $1.5 million to assist with that, I think it was a great step. But again, I think the rule of law should prevail here. And if there's an opportunity to remove a serious or violent predator from our community and via ICE, if that's the methodology to make our community safer, I'm supportive of the sheriff in going in that direction and what the board also approved.
Thank you. Let's stick with the sheriff's department. Melanie, you'll go first on this one. Could you address the conflicts between IOLERA and the sheriff and give us your viewpoint?
Yeah, certainly. It's unfortunate because I think that the voters of Sonoma County were very clear when they passed Measure P, and that passed in 2020, actually, when I was running for reelection. And so, I think that it's unfortunate that it has come to this. I know that there is a recent opinion handed down in which actually they will henceforth are able to call themselves the Inspector General's office, which is what they do and what they will be in practice going forward. I also think that the supervisors, what they could really, you set the tone through leadership and through culture. And if they are, supportive of the creation of IOLERO and Measure P, and they let the sheriff know that they're going to support him in how he carries out that measure, then it's going to make it a lot easier for him to deal with some of maybe the blowback or resistance that he's having with some of the people in his office. And I think that it would be helpful if the voters out there could let the sheriff know and let their supervisors know we passed Measure P for a reason. We want civilian oversight of law enforcement in Sonoma County. We want an inspector general. It's not too much to ask for transparency. And that's my time. So I'm going to stay on my my perfect record of being under time or just over.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you for that. So let me start with saying I'm a supporter of civilian oversight of law enforcement. I think it does make for a healthy community. And I'm also very supportive of what the mission statement of ILERO is. And for those that aren't aware of that, their mission is to improve the relationships, help improve the relationships between the community and the sheriff's office. Now, unfortunately, the way this was implemented, absolutely, it's very clear that the voters supported Measure P. But the way it came up, and when the Board of Supervisors put that on the ballot, they were given information by their county council saying this could be exposure to some potential litigation. And what has happened? The exact thing that they were warned about has happened. So now it's in the appeal process. And the Inspector General definition, that was a state law that was passed 6 months after Measure P passed. So is it retroactive? Again, that's a legal opinion. So again, 90 seconds to explain the complexity of who's got the authority to issue Garrity warnings or LIBOR warnings. It's complicated, and that's why it's in litigation. What I am very much assured of is that the sheriff, once the litigation is done, I am told he will follow the letter of the law, as he should. But there are some legal definitions here that some of the employee groups have their own rights. And so until that's mitigated and the legislation is clear, and we actually have this is what moving forward, this is what the law of the land will be. Unfortunately, I think we're going to be tied up in litigation. But again, I'm supportive of that mission. How do we improve that relationship between the sheriff's office and the community? ILERO can help with that.
And Todd?
The purpose of ILERO was transparency and public trust, because that's what they said was lacking in around the 2013 timeframe and in the past before that. And that's why the voters wanted this. Coming from the Sheriff's Department, I understand how this works, and we need to focus on things like public trust, because it's more of a detriment if we don't have it, obviously. And so people need to realize, though, is the investigation that they're talking about can actually hinder investigations for the criminal side. And we have to be very careful of that when you have independent oversight working side by side, or working against versus side by side with the sheriff's office. When they're issuing subpoenas, doing investigations, and offering disciplines for deputies, it can be seen as like a double jeopardy. And that's something that's illegal in our country. ILERO shouldn't be adversarial. They should be working in parallel with the sheriff's office. And that has been the problem, and why we're having these court cases and legal issues is because they're not working with the deputies and the sheriffs. The thing I would say is you need to have neutral oversight. And I think that people need to realize and remember that the sheriff is an elected position. If they don't agree with the way that he's running the department, the voters can vote him out and move in the person they will trust to do the job right and treat the community with the respect and trust and transparency that they desire.
Thank you. Tom, you'll go first on this one. Sonoma County is facing budget challenges, and one of our attendees is asking, name 3 budget items that you consider wants rather than needs.
That's a difficult one when you come to wants, because there's so many data points that aren't known. Namely, we're anticipating some budget cuts coming from the federal government, because with the county, a lot of it is pass through dollars, right? But a lot of those go to the safety nets. So I can't sit here and say, yeah, you need to drop X, Y, and Z, because again, that's the decision that the body, the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, makes that decision. So when you say you have wants or needs, that does need to be prioritized. When I first became chief of the Santa Rosa Police Department, it was during the Great Recessions, and we went through that process. What is mandatory, things that we have to do? What is essential, things that the community, and we believe it's an essential service, and then what is desirable? So I don't think there's a lot of fluff around the county right now, but when they need to start going through that process again, once they actually see the dollars, because the other big impact is going to be on our ag industry, right? So if revenues for our ag industry is starting to be depleted, because I know property tax revenue, about 26% of that came from the ag industry, which equates to about 18% of the general fund budget. So if that's being reduced, yeah, what are we going to start? working collaboratively together to lessen the impact on our community members, right? But I can't sit here and say these are the top three low-hanging fruit because I think this has been a very responsible board of supervisors, and there is no real easy low-hanging fruit. But they need to get together and talk about how are we going to manage that. And this budget process is just about to start in the next couple of weeks.
And Todd?
Budgets change on a yearly basis, and the needs of our county change on a yearly basis. And so that's a question that you can't answer unless you're part of the budget process and you know what's exactly going on at that exact moment. This is something that I have seen through the last 14 years of public service in an elected position. Every year we're doing budgets. So like when I got onto the school district, they were being taken over by the state. So I had to take that and say, what are your wants and needs in this budget? And you have to tighten it up and say, okay, here's where my checkbook and how much money I have, and this is what I can afford to do. And you start with the most necessaries, your infrastructure and things along those lines, and then you work your way out from there. When I was on the, like I said, they were being taken over by the state. When I left, there was $3 million in the bank account. I came to the city, we were in the red. We have now done a whole reorganization of our city staff. We have changed our wants and needs on a yearly basis, and now we're able to do 2-year budgets, and we are in the black. So everything changes, and it's a fluid document that you're working with. And so it's like in your house, you don't know what you're going to need day by day. You think you do, so you get the basics, but then after that, you have to see, okay, what can I afford and what can I do? And I look forward to doing that on this budget.
And Melanie?
Yeah, we're running a pretty tight ship right now. And so I think that it's important for, anyone who is making this decisions to have a clear-eyed view of what the essentials are first. And those are emergency services and, public safety. It's, it's children's health care, it's infrastructure, and operations so that we can continue to provide those, essential critical services that our citizens, our residents, and our businesses need just to continue to function. And then we need to make sure that we're focused on employee retention. We learned a very difficult lesson. Sonoma County is the only county in California that doesn't have a COLA or suspended a COLA for its retirees. In the last economic downturn in 2008, I think it was. And, I can't imagine what it was like to be an elected official during that time, whether you were on a school board, a city council, or supervisors. You had to make very, very difficult decisions. But, one of the important lessons is that you just can't get behind on salaries, workforce development, creating capacity in your workforce, and in your pension. So those would be things that I would think would be absolutely sacrosanct. And then we would have to take a look at any expanding projects or service enhancements and see where we can tighten the belt, probably across the budget.
Thank you. Thank you all. Todd, you'll go first on this one. As the older adult population increases 35% by 2030, the rate of unsheltered seniors is increasing as well. What steps will you take to reduce the number of unsheltered adults in District 4?
We've been working very hard on our seniors. Our numbers in Cloverdale are actually higher than what is predicted everywhere else. And so affordability is number one, and healthcare is number two. You have to give them somewhere to be and make sure that they are able to be taken care of. So if you look at all the affordable housing that has been going on, that is something that we want to continue, but we want to make sure that it is labeled for the right people. Rent stabilization and protection for rent increases. We've established ordinances in Cloverdale that allowed us to control the rent of our mobile home parks and things along those lines. So I'm always looking for ways to keep costs down as much as possible and transportation available so that it costs them less to do more.
Melanie.
Yeah, this is an essential and growing challenge. It's all the counties in California with the growing population. I think Sonoma County's population is aging the fastest, so we're really going to be impacted by this. And the biggest sector of new homeless folks is the elderly and the aging, and that's just it's a shameful position that we are in this society where people who have worked their entire lives in their 60s and 70s are suddenly, facing homelessness. And, just from the experience that I have, I know that the most cost-effective way of addressing the homeless crisis is preventing homelessness in the first place, is making sure that there are rental protections and, fully funding legal aid and making sure that they have the resources that they need to keep people in the housing that they have. One of the issues that we're going to continue to work on as at the county level is the number of mobile home parks that we have throughout the county, which are just the de facto affordable and moderate housing. So we need to make sure we're doing everything that we can to protect those folks and keep them in their homes.
And Tom?
Yeah, Don, you did correctly identify this is one of the largest, if not the largest, growing demographic in Sonoma County. What I've personally been doing, there's a state master plan on aging that identifies 6 areas. And again, this is throughout the state. In Sonoma County, there's a lot of interest up in Cloverdale, and I've been participating in those meetings. And those group of seniors have identified 2 areas that they want to work with, right? First being transportation. Number 2 is basic needs. Right? Because if you're living in far North County, and let's say you do have health care, but it's down in Kaiser and Santa Rosa, how do you get from point A to point B? Don't have those solutions yet, but we're working with seniors to try to identify those challenges and how do we overcome them. One of the other big issues is basic needs. So one of the things we're working on is doing a senior job fair to try to provide additional resources to the senior population that many employers may not know the skill level and the talents that are currently present in the community, but you never thought of someone over 50 or over 60 willing to continue to participate in the workforce, but the interest is there. Regarding the housing aspect of it, when I was the chair of the continuum of care, we had programs called the SHARE program, where you had older adults who purchased a house with maybe 4 bedrooms. And for a variety of reasons, do you still need, when you had all the kids still living there, do you still need those 3 or 4 bedrooms? Could you maybe partner with this nonprofit and they would pair a senior that needs the housing with a senior that actually wants to provide that housing? So expanding programs like the SHARE program that is currently in existence right now in Sonoma County, I think it needs to expand because the need is great.
Thank you all. Melanie, you'll go first on this question. Something we all love to talk about. What changes would you try to make, if any, to the recently passed cannabis ordinance?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that the supervisors are making a tremendous amount of progress on the items that are within their jurisdiction. I think that, as being a council member when Prop 64, when we were trying to implement the cannabis ordinance just within our city limits, I think one of the things that we really missed as council members and maybe as supervisors, and especially at the state level, was that it is our responsibility as city government and county government to regulate these businesses. But it's for so long it took a long time to overcome a lot of the biases that folks had against whether it was being grown or being sold in their cities. And it's really not about the ability for jurisdictions to raise tax revenue or excise taxes, or for the county to raise money. It's really about the economic development potential of an agricultural business, manufacturing, and retail, and the jobs that creates. And so, as a supervisor, I would see it through that lens as making sure that we are, protecting neighbors and protecting folks. But, Prop 64 passed. It's the law of California. It's here, and let's, see it as a positive, not a negative.
And Tom?
Yes. Had a feeling this question would come up because it is very controversial. And in watching that supervisor meeting, it feels like many people are feeling they weren't heard. Their voices were not heard, specifically the neighbors. I think I am supportive of additional exploration of exclusionary zones and have the process set up. I'm all about define the process so you don't have to defend the decision. Without that ability to have the exclusionary areas set up, that concerns me because the neighbors were not being listed there. It's not a guarantee that it wouldn't go in, but identify the process that voice gets on the table, right? And a lot of this is regarding the outdoor grow. And I just don't think the current setback is enough, right? I'm in favor more of keeping it 1,000 foot setback because I know personal use is now legal here, and that's very difficult for me to you know, support, but it's here, right? And so we've managed that, I think, very well in the city of Santa Rosa. But I also recognize the impacts of that. So in the city of Santa Rosa, just indoor grows, didn't allow the outdoor grows. So this is a new industry, a relatively new industry. So how do we manage that? I prefer let's be a little bit more restrictive, right? Because that is an industry that wouldn't it be wonderful too if the cannabis industry was thriving, but it can't have the impact to our existing ag products, right? Because smelling cannabis burning is that part of the other outdoor experiences that we want to have in northern Sonoma County.
And Todd.
Yeah, cannabis exclusion zones are a priority. You have to take care of the people and protect the neighbors of the people around so they aren't affected by the people that do want to grow or smoke the cannabis. I'm totally for it. I understand there's a lot of medicinal value, and we've worked hard to make sure that the dispensaries and things along those lines are protected in our areas. Efficiency with inspections when you go to things like dispensaries are a way to help along the lines with cannabis. One of the things we did in Cloverdale is we eliminated one of the inspections because you were doing dual inspections costing more money, which raised the cost of the products, which changed things for business owners, and your economic development goes down from that. The tax rates that they always set, everyone sets them different here. Every city is different, the county's different. And it's not about making money, and it's not about being the cool guy. It's about just paying for itself, just like every other business should. So we've found that happy medium where we're at, and I look forward to trying to make that happen with the county. Ag is not the same. You don't smell the grapes the way that you smell the marijuana, so we have to be very careful with that. And I don't think that it should have the same allowances as your vineyards. And then the last thing I really want to make sure is we're protecting our children. As of right now, we know that we need to do more education because as you see the alcohol use going down, which is a great thing, you see the cannabis on the rise through children. And we need to make sure that we have an education program to teach people the harm and the good of our cannabis, since it is legal here in California.
Thank you. Okay, Tom, you'll answer this one first. Does the Board of Supervisors have a role in expanding broadband and wireless services into rural areas where there is inadequate services?
Absolutely. I think the board does have a role in that. But is it their sole role to actually improve that connectivity? So partnering, I think, is the key thing. I know previous federal administrations have provided federal dollars to expand those networks. And if that pipeline has slowed down, what can we do to expand it into our rural areas, specifically at libraries? Are there some creative ways that we can expand the connectivity issue so that people throughout Sonoma County, especially in the rural areas, still have access to that? Because I think that increasing the broadband connectivity ability for many areas of our county, those are also jobs, right? It can increase jobs. And there are some places in Sonoma County that would be a barrier to an online job that you might have. So I think, yes, the county does play a role. It's not their sole. I'm not in favor of taking X percentage of the budget and allocate it for that, but find out what are some other people, organizations that we can partner with to do this together as a partnership, a collaboration, versus the county alone is responsible for expanding the broadband capabilities throughout Sonoma County.
Thank you. Todd?
The answer for me is, oh my gosh, yes. Welcome to Cloverdale. We don't have it, and we're looking forward to getting some service up here. We're in the backwoods, and it seems like we're the forgotten child when it comes to things like that and with technology. But the thing to think about is right when you finally get all the broadband everywhere, technology has already passed. And right now we're using different things like Starlink and different products along those lines that you don't always have to have the underground. But absolutely, the county plays a role in that because that's a public safety issue. If you don't have access to things like this these days, people don't have landlines. Companies are canceling landlines. And so broadband is an absolute necessity to make sure that people stay safe. So yes, they do have a role in that. There is infrastructure you see going up and down the freeways currently. I look forward to pushing that deeper into our rural areas like it should be. And I look forward to making that one of the budget items that I see coming forward.
Thank you. Melanie?
Yeah, the county is deeply involved where it can be. One example of that is the Access Sonoma Broadband initiative, and that was something that a friend of mine was working on at the Economic Development Board when I was on it several years ago, and it continues to advocate for rural broadband and seek actions for funding. And of course, as we've seen in driving up and down the 101 recently, the Highway 101 fiber project is being worked on probably since it's 7:13 right now. The crews are out there on the 101 between Santa Rosa and Cloverdale, and that project I think is anticipated to be done probably the end of this year. That's being managed by Caltrains, but all of this it relies on partnerships and good relationships between the multiple agencies that are trying to discuss this. So it's absolutely key to our economic development plan. We've got to get the backbone, though, up north and south so that we can extend it farther into our rural areas.
Thank you. Todd, you'll go first on this. I think you touched on this earlier. There's a two-basin solution regarding the removal of dams on the Eel River. Will still provide for some water to continue to flow into the upper Russian River. What's your position on this issue?
Well,
not controversial at all, right?
Not controversial at all, and I have zero knowledge on this. So if the dams come out, and we always do this, the if and thens, and if they come out and the two-basin solution goes in, there is an issue with it, and it's the matrix that they've created with the Round Valley tribe to divert the water through it. If you look at this year's rainfall, in Sonoma County, in our area, we have 98% of our rainfall. And guess how much water would have been used in that diversion to put water into Lake Mendocino? 0 gallons. Under that matrix that they've created, and you can ask Sonoma Water, 0 gallons would have been diverted. So the matrix is wrong. And I've let them know that we wouldn't be pushing against the projects if they had done a matrix that would make sure water was diverted. You have to have a guaranteed amount that is diverted every year into Lake Mendocino to make sure there is a guaranteed diversion amount that is released into the Russian River to provide water for the environment, to provide water for the natives, and to provide water for the people. Without your domestic water in the river, you will have wells going dry every year. You will have your constant curtailments, and we will fail in our area, whether it's ag, all your other jobs, your lumber mills, and just your own home values and being able to live here.
And Melanie?
Sorry, my screens weren't cooperating. I absolutely support the Eel Russian Project Authority's approach. And it's the best available pathway forward to us. And we've got to be clear-eyed about that, what that means. PG&E's powerhouse has been offline since 2021, and the utility chose not to repair it. No viable agency came forward, and fighting reality it isn't a strategy. That's not going to get us anywhere. The dams are going to come down, and ERPA was created to ensure that when Cape Horn was removed, the Russian River doesn't lose its diversion access, and we're going to be able to do that through the new Eel Russian facility, and it is planned to be built simultaneously with the dam removal. Sonoma County has a strong history of partnership on this process. We have a seat on ERPA's board, and as a supervisor, and the supervisors do also serve on the board of Sonoma Water, I intend to use that position to aggressively hold this coalition to the promises that they've made and the sequencing commitments that have been made.
Thank you, Tom.
Another great question that cannot be explained in 90 seconds, because a lot of people try to make it a real simple, solution to it. So much work has been done because there is the two-basin solution that's been worked on. Is that going to happen? Well, that's up to FERC. That's not us. It's a federal bureaucracy. But what things have been done has mentioned some of the new facilities, and there's actually now studies going on because we need that sustainable water source. Two of those studies that they're evaluating is, what about if we had a pipe from Lake Sonoma up to Cloverdale? Would that assist us with a sustainable water source? What if we raise the dam at Lake Mendocino to increase that above ground capacity? That also needs to be explored. But as we're starting doing this simultaneously, the federal process is going, and who knows how long that federal process is going to take. But until we identify that sustainable water source, I don't think things should be removed. And again, we're talking this could be a decade or more before any of this actually happens. So that above ground water storage, I think, is huge. Also, the Hansen project that's being explored on the Russian River just outside of Windsor, that would actually create wetlands where there are currently gravel mines. That may also increase the water recharge area because it's slowing the river down, so it would recharge the Russian River and our groundwater supplies. So we need to continue to explore those opportunities to mitigate any negative things that may happen through the two basin solution. But we need to continue to stay on this and work collaboratively together because it involves much more than just the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors. It's all the way down in Marin County and up in Mendocino County. We need to continue those working relationships.
Thank you all. Melanie, you'll go first on this one. How do you address confirmed or perceived conflicts of interest while serving in the public office?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think that you have to work really closely with your staff and make sure that any conflicts that you do have are flagged adequately. I know that I was caught up in a perceived conflict of interest that was inadvertent on my part, and it reiterated to me that I have to make sure that I put systems in place so that any conflicts that I might have are definitely flagged ahead of time and items are pulled. I think that the human brain and the way that we typically operate, we're designed for thinking, not remembering, and we're fallible and mistakes happen. We just need to make sure that we have better systems in place so that we're both in compliance with the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, and that we're just completely transparent. One of the things I did as a council member is I made sure that I made a note of all of my council related meetings, and I made them available in writing in my report out so that people would know, who I'm talking with, who I'm meeting with, and that I'm, meeting my commitments to go to my board meetings and give reports out. So, we can definitely do better, I think, at the municipal level and probably at the Board of Supervisor level to be more proactive and make sure that we're complying with regulations and that we're also cooperating with the spirit of the law.
Thank you. Tom?
And so for me, when it comes to conflict of interest, it's ultimately the responsibility of whether it be candidates or the actual person sitting in that office to be aware of what those conflicts are. But again, you shouldn't have to do it alone. That's where staff is excellent, or they can be a great assets to it, because if it is a project, in Santa Rosa, we used to know if you're within X number of 100 feet of the project, they would let you know. But ultimately, it's upon the candidate. And when I was on the city council, I read everything, so I know where I live and I know where I invest. I know what I know what my conflict of interest would be. But actually having that support system with, in this case, it would be the county to understand what potentially may go up. One of the other challenges is the Levine Act is relatively new legislation that they've changed the rules a little bit. But again, it's incumbent upon us to understand what the ramifications and what the letter of the law is. We are also very fortunate in Sonoma County. There are many community members, and I think all of us have received some of this feedback, where someone is more than happy to point out this is a conflict of interest. I welcome that feedback because I would not do anything intentionally that would violate that conflict of interest. So it's understanding what the law is and being updated with the new legislation that comes out of Sacramento or Washington, but holding yourself accountable for making sure there aren't conflicts of interest as you're doing your day-to-day work on the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, this one's very difficult because the connections that people have in a small area like this, it's very easy to get caught up into this. Somebody like me as a general contractor, I have contracts with a lot of different groups, and you're like, well, this group is friends with this group and friends with this group, and it can very easily get you caught up into something, whether you knew it or not. So you would have to spend a lot of time with your staff and with county council, or now it's with my city council and people that are involved in anything that you do to see is there any connections? Is there any type of financial connection that you could make in any way? And if you can put the dots together, then you need to err on the side of caution and recuse yourself. We all try to do it every chance that we get. Currently, I work with my council, and I talk to them every time. I say, okay, here's who I have, here's what I've done. Is there any type of thing that I need to recuse myself for? And if there isn't, great, I follow their lead. I would do the same with my staff. I would do the same with county council, and everything that I do, I try to err on the side of caution. However, things can slip through, and it's the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law is very difficult. And as the rules change and the goalpost moves, we just need to make sure that we're staying on top of it and doing the best that we can, and know that we're here with our hearts in the community and not trying to do bad things and nefarious things.
Okay, Tom will take our last question first. The federal government has not renewed Affordable Care Act subsidies for health insurance and have added requirements to qualify or requalify for Medicaid. Thousands of people may lose health insurance in Sonoma County, and this will impact social services, health centers, emergency rooms, and more. What actions do you think the Board of Supervisors should take to mitigate this issue?
That's a very challenging question, because I think the big thing, and some of the things that the board has done when the SNAP program was first stopped, they found some dollars and they committed it to Red Rampart Food Bank, because they're going to now try to mitigate the impacts of those lack of SNAP benefits. But it's very real, and I think what we need to do is, again, do this together as a community. I've had conversations with healthcare centers to say, what are those impacts going to be? And they look at it, it's going to be very real. So you're not going to get, you're only going to get generic drugs. I mean, that's going to be a very big impact with that, right? So we need to talk to our nonprofit partners who are in this field to say, what are you planning? What can the county do? They're the subject matter experts about providing health care to the committee members, right? And so working with them and hearing from them, what can the county do to support that? It's a big concern with both our health services department and our human services department, because so many of those federal pass-through dollars, there's not going to be as much to pass through. So how are you going to mitigate those impacts? It's not a real easy answer, but again, working together with our current existing resources in our community by reaching out to those healthcare centers, our other nonprofit partners, along with our subject matter experts that are County of Sonoma employees in the health and human services department. That's what we have to do. And then, just like I mentioned earlier, what's the mandatory things we have to do? Are there desirable services that we can no longer afford to offer because those lack of federal dollars are not coming through the pipeline?
First thing we need to do is start working with our congressmen and lobby to get the right things done here. No matter who's in that administration, we need to make sure that they're doing the right thing for our people, and we need to push and work hard for that. Up here in Cloverdale, I have focused over the last 8 years on getting a healthcare center put in, because the cost isn't just the drugs, it's the access and the transportation and things along those lines. And so if they have access for our senior population or low income population that can't get to their appointments, they're a lot more expensive. And so we need to make sure that we have the cost down by providing the access closer in proximity to where they live to make it easier. We also focus on our NGOs and our businesses to help out, because this is their community and their area, and you need to work hard with them. Some of the things I've done personally, I started a Narcan program in our town, and it's actually been mirrored in other cities now. What we did is I made a thing where everybody goes out to all businesses. They have access to Narcan through St. Vincent de Paul and through Alexander Valley Healthcare, and these businesses can now provide different things that are allowed to be provided to anybody that needs them in our area, and make it just easier to access. And so it's all about access for this right now, and I've been working hard on it for 8 years, and I want to continue doing so.
Melanie?
This is one area that we are going to really have to pull together. It's going to impact, people at every level, working families, our seniors, people with kids. And I think that, one of the areas that one of the things that the county can really do is look at how we can provide some more affordability for access to food, rental assistance, making sure that people are, at least their homes are secure. It's going to take the community really pulling together. Unfortunately, or fortunately, one of the biggest expenses that the county has is actually paying the insurance of our employees and our retirees to the tune of about $100 million a year. And so while we are dealing with addressing the crisis, we also need to look at mid and long-term solutions. And one of those that we need to pull together and push for is single payer healthcare in California and regionally. And we need to be pushing for that at the state and the federal level, because quite frankly, our residents can't go on like this any longer. Our cities and our counties are struggling to pay for health insurance, and small business, which relies on ACA for many of its entrepreneurs and employees, they're not going to be able to rely on it. So we need to take action on it now.
Thank you. That ends the question portion of our forum. And now each candidate will have 1 minute for their closing statement. And Todd, you get to go first.
All right, man, I go first to start it and first to end it. I love it.
Yeah, there you go.
I have a lifelong commitment to this community, but along with that, I have a proven track record. I've taken budgets that were in the black, school district that's being taken over by the state, and I've put them, budgets that were in the red, and I've taken them into the black. We were supposed to be a negative 1.5 this year. We are a 1.3 in the black. I work hard for my community. I'd be honored to represent all of you. I love this public service. I don't love politics. I love public service. And I am here to represent all of you, and I will continue to do so. I will be boots on the ground. I'll be working very hard at that. And so you can look me up on the internet at landsforsupervisor.com. If you have any questions, my phone number is personally on there. You can always get a hold of me, and I will meet with any of you. And I look forward to representing all of District 4 and starting in 2027.
Thank you. Melanie?
Well, I just want to give my thanks again to the Sonoma County League of Women Voters for this opportunity. This is really an unprecedented moment in Sonoma County. For the first time in decades, there are 2 open seats on the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors. And this is really an opportunity to put us on a path towards sustainability and equity and, to create our own Green New Deal for Sonoma County families, our growing senior population, and for the next generation. We only have to look at the successes that we've had, like the smart rail and trail, ag and open space. And when a coalition of labor, environment, and social justice advocates have come together, we've really done great things. That's the coalition that's supporting my campaign, and I'm asking you to join us. I'm endorsed by the Democratic Party, Congressman Huffman and the Sierra Club, and North Bay Labor Council. My name is Melanie Bagby. Please go to melaniebagby.com to learn more and join our coalition.
Thank you. Tom?
I also would like to extend my thanks for the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum. I think it's a very important part to continue our democracy here in Sonoma County. And as I mentioned earlier, and if you heard today, I think there are 16 different questions. There are some challenges ahead for Sonoma County. And I think Sonoma County, specifically in District 4, are looking someone with the leadership skills, the demonstrated leadership skills and experience, along with a track record of getting things done, along with that personal connections to continue to get things done. And I believe that I possess those things, and I would ask that those that are listening to this and the voters of District 4 agree with the 4 of the 5 current supervisors that think I would be the person best suited for this job. Congressman Thompson endorses me, as does our state assembly member, Chris Rogers, in addition to several different local elected officials throughout District 4. This is going to be a challenging job, and you want someone with the knowledge, skills, and experience to help maintain that quality of life we get to experience here in Sonoma County. More information about these and my views on my website, votetom.com. Thank you for participating.
Thank you all. Wow, we are really proud to have such an impressive and committed group of people running in District 4. It is going to be a difficult decision for the voters to make. We thank you for your service to the county and wish you the best of luck. And a big thank you to all of our volunteers who made this virtual forum possible, especially the interpreters who probably struggled with all of us are fast talkers. So it was probably difficult for them to get up to speed. We encourage everyone to get out and vote, and please encourage your friends and family to watch the recording of this forum on the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County YouTube channel. see the link on our website, www.lwvsonoma.org. And for more information on the candidate and their ballot measures, check out vote411.org. And we want to thank you and good night.